You trusted them with your safety, your family, and your hard-earned money, and they turned that trust into profit. For decades, General Motors built its image on loyalty. Generations who swore by their Chevrolets, who proudly parked their GMCs in driveways, who believed "Made in America" meant something. But behind the chrome smiles and flashy commercials, a storm was brewing. Because while you were making payments, GM was making calculations, deciding whether your life was worth more than their bottom line. And as leaks, lawsuits, and whistleblowers have revealed, those calculations were far colder than anyone imagined. This isn't just another recall story. This is a countdown of betrayal. The 8 most shocking ways GM turned its back on the very people who built its empire. It all started with a few whispers. Dealers are complaining about strange engine failures. Mechanics quietly note airbag sensors are malfunctioning on new models. And customers reporting steering issues that GM insisted were normal. Then came the leak. Documents surfaced that blew open the quiet confidence of the world's biggest automaker. Internal emails showed that executives knew about major safety defects years before recalls were ever issued. They didn't act, they calculated. In one memo, an engineer flagged a dangerous ignition fault that could cause sudden stalling. The response? An executive scribbled a note asking whether it would be cheaper to wait for a few incidents before approving the fix. It wasn't paranoia anymore, it was proof. GM's leadership didn't just fail to protect drivers, they actively debated the price of human life versus the cost of bad publicity. But as the documents spread, people realized this wasn't an isolated failure. It was the first crack in a system built on silence, and that silence was about to be shattered. You might think once a company gets caught, they'd rush to make things right. But GM's strategy was different. Delay, disguise, and deny. Leaked reports revealed dozens of defects quietly logged inside GM's internal system, from brake malfunctions to faulty airbag sensors to electrical fires that could start under the seat. Some of these vehicles stayed on the road for years before recalls were announced. Others were quietly fixed only during oil changes, without notifying the owners. Imagine driving your kids to school, believing your SUV's airbag will protect them, only to learn later that the company knew it might never deploy at all. Or imagine your car dying at 70 miles per hour on the highway because of a known engine fault GM chose to monitor instead of repair. The scariest part? Many of these cars are still out there today, sold on used lots, passed down between owners who have no idea what they're driving. GM's silence turned family cars into rolling liabilities, danger wrapped in a shiny badge. And when those dangers finally caught up, GM found another way to dodge responsibility. For millions of drivers, the warranty was the last line of defense. "Don't worry," the salesman said. "If anything happens, GM's got your back." Except they didn't. Owners who faced catastrophic failures, seized engines, fried electronics, collapsed transmissions, discovered the ugly truth. GM's coverage was written in fine print designed to fail them. Thousands of claims were denied on technicalities. A family's warranty was voided because they replaced tires at a non-GM shop. Another owner was told their transmission failure was driver error, even after technicians admitted it was a known defect. Behind every denial was a pattern. The longer GM could stall, the more likely coverage would expire. For customers, this wasn't an inconvenience. It was financial devastation. Parents drained their savings for repairs they should never have paid for. Retirees spent their pensions on engines that should have been replaced for free. Every denied claim was another reminder. GM's loyalty ended the moment your check cleared. And while customers were fighting for fair treatment, GM was finding new ways to profit, not from cars this time, but from you. You thought your car was just taking you places. But in reality, it was taking something from you, your privacy. Modern GM vehicles collect staggering amounts of data. Where you drive, how fast you go, when you brake, even how often you stop for coffee. That data, supposedly for performance monitoring, was secretly being sold to insurance companies, advertisers, and data brokers. Drivers who had never opted in discovered their driving habits being used to raise premiums or target them with ads. Every trip became a transaction. Your life, your habits, your routes, all converted into profit streams. GM promised innovation and safety, but what they really built was a surveillance machine on wheels. You weren't a customer anymore. You were a product, And the betrayal didn't stop at data, because while GM was selling your privacy, they were laughing about your safety behind closed doors. While commercials painted GM as family-friendly and patriotic, the truth inside the boardroom was far darker. Executives joked about how long they could delay bad press. Emails revealed discussions where safety engineers were overruled by accountants, and life-threatening issues were marked low priority. One internal report documented how managers compared the cost of redesigning a part against the estimated payout from lawsuits. If the lawsuits were cheaper, the fix was scrapped. They weren't building cars, they were building probability tables for disaster. Even worse, employees who raised alarms were told to let it go. Promotions went to those who stayed quiet, not those who spoke up. Behind every recall notice was a trail of memos, cover-ups, and decisions made by people who believed loyalty could be bought cheaper than integrity. But the cracks in their cover-ups were spreading, and soon, the public relations department would be forced to perform its most cynical magic trick yet. When the scandals finally started making headlines, GM had to act. But instead of genuine accountability, they crafted an illusion, the recall mirage. Recalls were supposed to protect customers. Instead, GM used them to protect its image. They downplayed deadly defects as minor inconveniences. A failing airbag became a deployment irregularity, an engine cutting out at full speed, performance issues. Press releases were timed to drop on weekends or holidays when no one was watching. Some recall letters were so vague that owners never realized their cars were at risk. By burying the details, GM minimized panic and delayed repairs. Meanwhile, drivers kept using vehicles that could stall, burn, or fail during a crash. To regulators, it looked like GM was being proactive. To customers, it looked like everything was fine. But under the surface, this was a PR strategy masquerading as safety. And when those customers finally pushed back, they discovered the next layer of GM's defense, one designed to make sure they never won. For years, engineers inside GM tried to sound the alarm. They saw the faulty switches, the failing brakes, the corrupted data logs. They sent warnings up the chain and paid the price. Some were reassigned to meaningless roles. Others were fired outright. A few were quietly blacklisted across the industry. Whistleblowers described meetings where they were told to stop being emotional or risk their careers. Internal investigations were launched, not into the defects, but into the people who reported them. One former engineer said it best. At GM, speaking up about safety was treated like sabotage. Even when some went public, GM's media machine worked overtime to discredit them, calling them disgruntled employees. This culture of fear meant that critical warnings never reached the public until it was too late. And when the walls finally closed in and the lawsuits began piling up, GM's leadership faced their reckoning. In court, under oath, and under fire. Thousands of customers have now joined class action lawsuits against GM, demanding accountability for everything from data theft to deadly defects. The courtroom has become the only place where regular people can finally face the corporate giant that betrayed them. These aren't minor complaints. They're stories of families who lost loved ones, of drivers whose vehicles failed at the worst possible moment, of owners left bankrupt after warranty rejections. Every document released in discovery adds another piece to the puzzle, proving GM's executives knew more, hid more, and cared less than they'll ever admit publicly. And while lawyers argue in court, the damage ripples through the real world. Dealers are closing, workers are being laid off, investors are fleeing. The empire that once symbolized American reliability is now a monument to corporate greed. But this story isn't just about GM. It's about what happens when loyalty is exploited, when customers are treated as expendable and truth becomes optional. Trust is like steel, strong when forged, but once cracked, it never returns to its original strength. GM didn't just lose customers, they betrayed generations. They sold safety for speed, promises for profits, and loyalty for leverage. Yes, new models will come, new ads will air, executives will make polished speeches about rebuilding trust. But real trust isn't rebuilt in a press conference. It's rebuilt when companies stop hiding, start listening, and remember who keeps them alive: the people. So now the question isn't, can GM fix its image? It's whether you'll ever let them. Because every time you choose where to spend your money, you're sending a message. A message that says, loyalty isn't for sale, safety isn't optional, and betrayal has a price. If this story opened your eyes, hit like, drop your thoughts below, and subscribe, because the fight for truth in the auto industry is just beginning. And next time, the scandal might be even closer to home.